I want to tell you about something that happens to me almost every single day at work. Someone sends me a contract or a complaint or a brief or a PowerPoint, and within 30 seconds of reading it, my brain starts to build a story. I start seeing where it's headed. I start forming opinions about who's right, who's wrong, what the outcome should be. My training kicks in. My pattern recognition fires up. And before I'm done reading the third page, I already have a working theory. And here's the thing. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes my theory holds up. But those times that I've gotten it wrong, where I've missed something important, I've misjudged a situation, or I've given bad advice, they were almost always the times that I skipped the most important step. The step where I slow down, push my theory aside, and admit to myself, I don't know enough yet. That phrase, I don't know enough yet, is one of the most powerful things a person can say. And, unfortunately, it's one of the things we are worst at saying. Not because we're stupid, not because we're lazy, but because our brains are wired to skip it. And our culture has made it almost impossible to say out loud without feeling like you've lost something. What I want to talk about today is not politics, although we'll touch politics, and it isn't media. We're going to touch that too. It's about a pattern that shows up everywhere. In courtrooms, comment sections, voting booths, dinner tables, boardrooms, group chats. It's that pattern of forming conclusions before we've gathered all information, of adopting positions before we understand what's beneath them, and of mistaking confidence for competence and opinions for understanding. That's why, when we come back, I'll be making the case for admitting you don't know enough. Welcome back to The Case For. I'm your host, Matt Campobasso. Today, we're doing a solo episode. It's just me sitting with something that has been on my mind for a while, and I want to be honest with you about something up front. I'm not making this case from some elevated position. I'm making it because I'm guilty of the very thing that I'm about to describe. I have formed opinions without doing the work. I have voted on things I didn't fully understand. And I have nodded along in conversations where I should have said, actually, I don't know enough about that to weigh in. And I know I'm not alone, because this is not a character flaw, it's a human flaw. It is wired into how our brains work, and it's being exploited not by some sort of shadowy conspiracy, but by a culture that has made confidence the currency and curiosity the cost. So today, I'm going to present 4 exhibits, which are 4 reasons why admitting you don't know enough is not weakness. It's the beginning of every honest opinion you'll ever hold. Let me lay out my argument. Every single day, we are asked by the news, social media, our friends, colleagues, algorithms designed to provoke us to have an opinion about everything immediately. And not just an opinion, a strong opinion, a confident one, an opinion we're willing to defend publicly and loudly and without hesitation. And most of us comply. Not because we've done the research, not because we've read the bill or that study or the article, but because having an opinion feels like participation. It feels like being informed. It feels like being a responsible citizen or a competent professional or an interesting dinner guest. But here's what I know from 20 years of practicing law. Confidence without information is very dangerous. In a courtroom, it gets people hurt. In a boardroom, it wastes time and money. In a democracy, it gets multiplied by millions and shapes policy that affects real lives. I'm not arguing that you should never have an opinion. I'm arguing that your opinion should come last, not first. Information should come first. Questions should come first. The honest assessment of what you actually know and don't know, that should come first. And the opinion, when it finally arrives, should be earned. Not inherited, not reflexive, not borrowed from whatever tribe you've decided you belong to, but actually earned. Exhibit A, the attorney's first lesson. I'm going to start with what I know best, which is the law. Because the legal profession taught me something I think applies to every human in every context. When something new comes in for work, a complaint, a contract dispute, a regulatory issue, The first thing that I do is read. Not skim, read. I read it line by line, clause by clause. I pull the statute or the law, and I do all of this before I form a single opinion about what's going to happen or what we should do. Why? Because the moment you form a conclusion, your brain starts working to confirm it. This is called confirmation bias, and it is the single most dangerous cognitive shortcut in professional life. Once you've decided what's true, your brain will filter every subsequent piece of information through that lens. You'll notice the evidence that supports your theory and unconsciously dismiss the evidence that doesn't, and you won't even realize that you're doing it. So the first discipline I learned as a lawyer was to delay the conclusion. Gather first, read first, ask questions first. Let the facts build the picture instead of building the picture and then shopping for facts that fit it. Now here's the thing, lawyers, we are trained to do this. We spend 3 years in law school and decades in practice learning how to suspend judgment until the information is in. But nobody teaches this to citizens. Nobody teaches this to voters. Nobody teaches this to the person scrolling their phone at 10 p.m., reading a headline about a policy they've never researched, and forming an opinion that they'll carry into a conversation tomorrow and maybe into a voting booth next November. The skill is the same. The stakes are the same. That discipline is available to everyone, but almost nobody uses it. And the reason is Exhibit B. Why we skip the work. There's a psychological reason why people form opinions before they have information. And it's not laziness. It's efficiency. Your brain is a pattern matching machine. It's evolved to make fast decisions with incomplete information because, for most of human history, fast decisions kept you alive. See a shadow that might be a predator? Don't wait for more data, run. Hear a sound you don't recognize? Assume danger, react. That system served us well in the wild. It does not serve us well in a democracy. Because the same cognitive architecture that helped our ancestors survive is now helping us form instant opinions about tax policy, immigration, healthcare, education, foreign affairs, and 1,000 other issues that are too complex for a snap judgment. But our brains don't know that. Our brains treat a provocative headline the same way that they treated a rustling bush 10,000 years ago. Threat detected, opinion formed, prepared to defend. And then there's the second layer, the social layer. We don't just form opinions to understand the world, we form them to belong. This is where it gets incredibly uncomfortable, and I think it's the part that most people don't really want to examine. Think about how political identity works in our country right now. You pick a side, or a side picks you based on where you grew up, who raised you, what media you consume, what social circles you're in. And once you're on that side, you inherit a package of positions. Not one at a time, carefully evaluated, a package, an entire worldview, pre-assembled, ready to adopt. And at first, adopting it feels good because it gives you community, identity, and certainty all at once. The problem is, that package wasn't built by you. It was built by politicians, media outlets, and algorithms whose incentives have nothing to do with what you're understanding and everything to do with your engagement. Your loyalty, your vote, your click, they don't need you to understand the issue. They need you to feel strongly about it. And feeling strongly is so much faster than understanding. If you've ever watched a Jordan Klepper segment on The Daily Show, you know exactly what this looks like in practice. He walks up to people at rallies and events and asks simple, direct questions about the positions that they passionately defend. And the comedy, the reason why it's funny, is that most people can't explain the position they're holding. They can tell you what they believe. They cannot tell you why they believe it. They can tell you who they're against. They cannot tell you what the policy actually says. The conviction is a mile wide and an inch deep. And before anybody uses that as a partisan punchline, this is not a left or right problem. This is a human problem. It happens in every group, every party, every ideology. The machinery is the same. Someone else builds the construct. You adopt it because it fits the identity that you've chosen or the identity that was chosen for you. And the gap between what you believe and what you understand goes unexamined because examining it feels like disloyalty. Exhibit C, the cost of premature certainty. So what does it actually cost us? I think personally the cost is enormous and largely invisible. Start with relationships. How many friendships or familial relationships have been strained or ended over a political disagreement where neither person has done enough homework to justify the strength of their position? How many Thanksgiving dinners have been ruined by two people yelling at each other about a policy that neither of them have actually read? I have seen this in my own life. I've been in conversations where I was arguing passionately, and then later, in the quiet of my own mind, realized that I couldn't actually articulate the details of what I was arguing for. I had a feeling, I had a position, I had that team jersey on, but I didn't have the understanding. And the passion I brought to that conversation was not earned. It was borrowed. From a headline, a pundit, an algorithm, all of which knew exactly how to activate me. Now scale that to voting. Voting on party lines is the epitome of weighing in on topics without fully understanding them. It's saying, I trust the package, I trust the label, I trust the team, and I don't need to evaluate each item individually because the brand is enough. And I understand why people do it. The voting ballots are long. Issues are complex. Researching each one of those takes time. It's more efficient just to go down the line as long as you get most of them right. But efficiency is not the same as responsibility. And every time we vote on a name or a letter next to a name instead of a position that we've actually examined, we are outsourcing one of the most important decisions a citizen can make to someone else's packaging. This is not about which party is right. This is about whether we're making decisions or having decisions made for us. And I think if most people were honest, really honest, the answer would be uncomfortable. The cost of premature certainty isn't just a bad conversation or a strained relationship. It's a democracy full of people who feel strongly and understand weakly. And the gap between those two things is right where manipulation lives. That's where propaganda works. That's where algorithms do their damage. Not on people who are stupid, on people who are certain before they're informed. Exhibit D, the way back. Okay, so we've established the problem. Our brains are wired for fast conclusions. Our culture rewards confidence over curiosity. Our political system packages opinions for us and discourages us from examining them individually. The question is, what do we do about it? And I want to be realistic here. I'm not going to tell you to read every bill that Congress proposes. I'm not going to tell you to become an expert on every issue before you're allowed to speak. That's not practical, and it's not my point. The point is the pause, the moment between encountering an issue and forming a position. That is where everything changes. Here's what I've started doing, and I'm going to share it not because I've mastered it, but because it's helping. First, when I encounter an issue I feel strongly about, I ask myself a question. Can I explain the other side's position in a way they would recognize? Not a straw man, not a caricature, the actual best faith version of why someone reasonable might disagree with me. If I can't do that, I don't know enough yet, and I need to go learn before I'm qualified to hold my own position, let alone argue it. Second, I've started catching myself when I'm borrowing certainty. There's a feeling that comes with repeating something you heard on a podcast or a pundit or from a friend. It feels like your opinion, but it's actually a rental. You're wearing someone else's conclusion and calling it your own. When I catch that feeling, I stop and I say, do I actually know this, or did I just hear it from someone who sounded confident? Third, I have given myself permission to say the most underrated words in the English language. I don't know enough about that. Not as a cop-out, not as disengagement, but actually as a starting point, as an honest acknowledgement that the world is complex. Most issues have layers that I haven't explored, and my silence is more responsible than my uninformed certainty. And fourth, and to me this is the one that matters the most, I've started reading past the headline, reading the actual article, reading an actual bill, reading the primary source instead of somebody's quick interpretation about it. This is harder and slower and less satisfying than the quick take, but it's the only way to own your opinion instead of renting it. We all have free will, every single one of us. We have the ability to slow down, ask questions, read, learn, and then arrive at a position that is actually ours. Not the parties, not the algorithms, not the pundits, but ours. But that free will only works if we exercise it. And exercising it starts with 3 words that our culture has made almost impossible to say. I don't know. Let me raise the objection that I know is coming. Hey, Matt, this sounds like enlightened centrism. It sounds like you're saying both sides are the same. Nobody should have a strong opinion, and the answer to every issue is somewhere in the middle. That's a cop-out. Some things are genuinely clear. Some positions are right, some are wrong. Telling people to slow down is just telling them not to act. So listen, that's a fair objection, and I want to talk about it directly. I'm not saying that both sides are the same. I'm not saying there are no clear moral issues. I'm not saying the answer is always right up the middle. Some things are genuinely straightforward once you've done the work. What I'm saying is that the work has to come first. The reading, the questioning, the honest evaluation. And for too many of us, it doesn't. The position comes first, and the work either comes later or never comes at all. Strong opinions are valuable. Informed, strong opinions, those are powerful. Uninformed, strong opinions are dangerous. And the only difference between the second and the third is whether you did the homework. I'm not asking anybody listening to be less passionate. I'm asking them to earn their passion. And if earning it means sitting with uncertainty for a little while, sitting with the discomfort of not knowing, then that's not actually weakness. To me, that's the price of intellectual honesty. And I think it's a price worth paying. So I'm going to overrule this objection. Ladies and gentlemen of the listening jury, this is what I believe. We are living in a time where the loudest voices in every room, in politics, in media, in our own social circles, are the most certain. And certainty is seductive. It feels like strength. It feels like clarity. It feels like you've figured out something that other people haven't. But certainty without understanding is just noise. And we have so much noise right now that most of us have forgotten what signal sounds like. Signal sounds like, I read the bill. I talked to someone who disagrees with me. I changed my mind when I found out new information. I don't know enough about that yet, but I'm going to find out. That is not weakness. That's not fence sitting. That's not enlightened centrism or both-sidism or any other label designed to make intellectual honesty feel like a character flaw. That is how a free person uses their free will in a free society. By thinking, by questioning, by doing the work before talking. The constructs we're living inside of, the political packages, the tribal identities, the pre-assembled worldviews, those were not built by us. They were built for us. By people and systems whose interests are not our interests. And every time we adopt a position without examining it, we are not exercising our freedom. We're surrendering it. We're letting someone else do our thinking, and we're calling it conviction. I want to be a person who earns his opinions. I want to be the kind of father that teaches his kids to ask questions before they form answers. I want to be a citizen who walks into a voting booth and who knows, genuinely knows, not feels or assumes or heard why I'm making a choice. And when I don't know, I want to be brave enough to say that I don't know, because the world does not need more confident people. It needs more curious ones. Here's how to take this out of the courtroom and into your actual life. First, the Steelman test. The next time you feel strongly about an issue, any issue, try to articulate the best version of the conversation on social media, wherever. Ask yourself, is this mine? Did I arrive at this opinion from my own reading or thinking or evaluation? Or am I repeating something I heard from someone who sounded confident? If it's a rental, either make it yours by doing the work or be honest that you're still forming your view and set the rental down. Third, read one primary source this month. Pick an issue that you care about, not the opinion piece about it, not the tweet thread, not the cable news segment or a TikTok, the actual source, the bill, the study, the court opinion, the data, just one. And notice how different the source feels from the commentary. That gap between what something actually says and what somebody tells you it says, that's where most of the manipulation ends up living. So that's my case for today. If this one landed with you, if you recognized yourself in any of it, I would love to hear about it. Post your thoughts with hashtag #TheCase4 and tell me, what's an issue that you feel strongly about where, if you're being honest, you haven't done enough homework? And what would it look like to go earn that opinion? Each one of us has free will. We should use it. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, whatever your case is, don't be afraid to build it and carry it out into the real world.